once you welcome that and once you invite that, you'll have some really insightful conversations with your employees, with your leaders, and you'll be able to help each other. And with that, I think you can bring a lot of greatness and a lot of positivity to your workplace.
Hello, and you're very welcome to the Leadership Discoveries podcast and to this special Gen Z or Gen Z edition, depending on where you are in the world. And I'd like to introduce firstly Clara Bolger, and Clara talks to me from the Netherlands. Clara, you're very welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Shirley. I'm super excited to have a chat with you today.
And I'm really looking forward to this conversation, Clara. But first of all, could you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Of course, of course. I'm originally from Dublin in Ireland, and I moved to the Netherlands 5.5 years ago. And I've had a bunch of different roles since I've been here, but mostly within the people or HR operations space. Most recently, over the last few years, I've had a focus in payroll across EMEA and APAC. I also recently studied a Master's of Science in Business Administration in the Vrije Universiteit, which specialised in leadership and change management. So yeah, but I'm currently at the moment payroll manager for a software company that specialises in engineering technology across aviation and transport sectors.
Very interesting. So you went over to Amsterdam where you studied for your master's over there.
Yeah.
I think you did some pretty interesting research actually in your dissertation, which was around immigrant workers and onboarding. Can you just tell us just a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So it was about the lived experiences of immigrant workers within a startup, particularly Dutch startups and scale ups, and then also a comparison between male and female. So yeah, some of the findings were really interesting, particularly when it came to the Dutch aspect of things. But yeah, overall, it was a really interesting investigation.
Very good, really interesting topic, very relevant topic as well, I
Of
suppose, in
course.
today's world. Yeah. So maybe we could just start off, Clara, we're talking about leadership. Like, what does leadership mean to you? And do you think that's different to what older generations might see in terms of leadership?
Yeah, well, I mean, leadership, when I hear this word, what I hear or what I want to envision or feel is empowerment. And leadership to me is about support and guidance and kind of being present for your team and the people around you as well, and not being above the people that you're leading per se, but rather creating a clear direction or pathway for them. And you can do that through a lot of tools, through transparency, through creating trust, guidance, rather than perhaps old fashioned tactics or perspectives such as fear or intimidation or kind of orders. I mean, that's just my take on it. But I think leadership is something that can be considered differently in a lot of older generations. I think leadership could be considered to be kind of a boss role, quote unquote, in from older generations, where you would kind of take instruction undoubtedly, while now it's a leader is someone who leads by example and kind of helps the people around them to learn and grow too. And ultimately, I think leadership is now seen less about power and more about purpose.
And is that your lived experience, Clara? You know, on the jobs that you've had to date, is that what you see?
I would say so. I do see different kind of I've had different experiences and seen different things with leaders from different generations. There's different styles. Of course, they have different experiences and they go off what they know and what they've experienced as well. So yeah, across all the different industries and the different types of companies I've worked for, I've definitely see this kind of varied style amongst different generations.
Very good, very interesting. And when you look at sort of the landscape out there, can you describe a leader famous or personal to you indeed, where you actually say they really inspire me? And why do they inspire you, Clara?
More the story kind of comes to mind rather than, let's say, the person. But of course this person is also quite inspiring, but I think the story of Whitney Wolfe Herd is quite inspiring. I don't know if you
No,
if you know
yeah,
this
tell us a
person,
little
but
bit about,
yeah,
yeah.
she worked for Tinder, and she was, I think, she was in C-suite of Tinder, and I think she had a hard time up there kind of breaking into, let's say, the manosphere that was in leading Tinder. and she had quite a challenging time there. I think her story is quite inspiring to me because it's one of resilience, and that's something that I always admire, and one of strength. After her challenging time there, she actually went on to build a really innovative dating app called Bumble, which actually empowers a lot of other women, and really focuses on the safety of women as well, which, yeah, is something that is really close to my heart. But it is really hard to pick just one. But I'm really admiring every woman that is pushing into the leadership space at the moment, whether it be politically or within the business world, having their voices heard, and by doing that, they're actually advocating for women overall and showing that women do have a place within these spaces of the world, and also highlighting the experience of women today. And I think that takes a lot of bravery, and yeah, with that, I find it very inspiring.
That's a great example, Clara, from a number of different perspectives, I suppose, as you say, the resilience,
Yeah,
breaking boundaries, persistence, all of those great qualities that often are not just gendered based either, that men who are listening to this as well, equally it applies to them. So a great example there. Just when you look at yourself and your generation, you're representative of Gen Z or Gen Z, as we said. What type of work culture do you think this group of people are looking for today?
we're a pretty passionate generation, I have to say, about world issues, and we want to feel like the work that we're doing matters, or at least is contributing to the world and our future in a positive way. And with this, I think authenticity as an organizational value is to be considered, and also embedding that within the culture, through genuine initiatives, and transparency. We want to feel like our work matters and it's contributing positively to the world around us, and for purpose, not just to be a buzzword, but we're drawn to companies that care about their impact, whether it's on people, the world, or its own employees. To add to that point, I think diversity and inclusion is a big topic of today, and it's something that Gen Z definitely appreciate, not just in words but also in actions, not just through programs and trainings, but we actually want to see a genuinely diverse workforce around us, one that is supported through inclusion as well. Another thing that comes into my mind for this is flexibility, not just through a flexible workplace model, but to actually have flexibility embedded in the culture. We grew up digitally with so much exposure to technology, so remote work and adaptable hours just make sense to us. Providing a flexible workplace as well also shows that you really trust your workforce, and that you are human, and that you understand that we're human as well, and we may need to kind of adapt to cater to certain things in our lives, like doctor's appointments, dental appointments, family affairs, those kinds of things. And I think having this as part of your culture really caters to well-being, and then in turn happiness and health of your employee as well.
Great answer. And there's so much in that, Clara. I love to unpack. And if we had more time, I could talk to you a lot longer. But can I just unpack a couple of the things that you actually
Sure.
say there? I'm just interested in this view of the world at the moment. And obviously, DEI or EDI, whichever perspective you want to put on it,
Yeah.
is very much a topic of conversation at an international level. And I'm just wondering, do you feel pessimistic or do you feel optimistic? I mean, the people that you talk to of your generation, what sort of feeling is there in terms of where we're at in the world at the moment?
Depending on experiences, I really think it could be a mix of views. I mean, if you come from a minority, you might have a more of a pessimistic view from your own experience, or even as a woman, you might have a certain experience that might pull you back. But overall, I do think that we're going in the right direction. Change is happening, it just can't happen all at once. And I think with Gen Z being this passionate and being so connected to these issues, the more we grow and get older per se, we'll be able to leave more of a mark on the world. So personally, I'm quite optimistic about where we're going. But of course, the world will give us lots of other challenges along the way. But I think overall we're going in the right direction. And I think Gen Z are quite vocal about these topics, and not afraid to hold back on explaining the why and the how and the what behind everything. And I think that in itself it's really a great advocation, and it's almost activism in itself. So I feel quite positive about it, but I think it is all down to your own experience and perspective.
And what about sustainability in a climate sense, not just, I'm not, I suppose I'm pulling it back a little bit, rather from that big broad sustainability agenda, but taking it down into climate action that, just wondering where people of your generation, are sitting in relation to that. Of course, we've got Greta Thunberg and we've got, sort of activists in that sense. But do you think this is very much on Gen Z radar?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think Gen Z, we still have a long future ahead of us, and we want to be around for the world and the climate to survive. So that's really how we see it, or at least how I believe we see it. But I think there's these tactics from organizations called like greenwashing, and stuff like this that really Gen Z want to pick apart and kind of eliminate, because yeah, we really want the authenticity, the transparency, from organizations of what they're really doing and how they are impacting the world and the climate, positively or negatively. I think once the truth is out, then you can kind of address it and move forward. But yeah, this is definitely most definitely on the radar. Because it's essentially, we see that as our future, and we want to see a healthy world for our future to thrive and for us to make our mark on the world as well.
Clara, can I pick up on just one other point that you made there a little bit earlier around the piece around inclusivity? I'm just curious, you have ADHD, and I'm just wondering, in terms of advice that you would give to leaders who may have neurodiverse workforces and may be wondering, how do I interact with this person? What's the right thing to do? What's the right thing to say here? Is there any advice that you could give leaders in that position that would help them be more effective when they're actually, interacting with somebody, who is in with that category of neurodiversity?
The first thing that comes to my mind for this is, as a leader, it's best to be open-minded, to remain open-minded about these things, and let's say to actively listen without an assumption. When it comes to neurodiversity, it can often be seen as a disability, and sometimes that word can come with, let's say, a negative connotation, when really it means just different. Neurodiversity, it can I often have a lot of challenges in my day-to-day life, and that I'm able to overcome, but I also have a lot of things that I'm able to do that perhaps a neurotypical mightn't be able to. Per se, I'm quite analytical, I'm able to strategize quite well, and these are almost kind of, not perks, but almost kind of additions to me that I have because I'm neurodiverse. And I think leadership need to understand and be open-minded to this, so they can provide the accommodations for those people to excel and for those people to feel welcome and fit in. Yeah, but I think really it's open-mindedness and creating a kind of a safe space where you have a two-way communication, you have dialogue about the needs. We all are different, whether we're neurodiverse or not. And I think everyone has strengths and weaknesses, and I think that's just something that needs to be acknowledged. But of course, there's different levels to neurodiversity. There's autism, there's ADHD, there's other types of intellectual things that are in that category. But really, it's open-mindedness and having the conversations and being welcoming to that, because once you welcome that, and once you invite that, you'll have some really insightful conversations with your employees, with your leaders, and you'll be able to help each other. And with that, I think you can bring a lot of greatness and a lot of positivity to your workplace.
And Clara, I'm struck even just listening to you. It's important for leaders to feel comfortable just asking questions, isn't it? Just asking, what is it you need, or does
Yes.
this work for you? Do you need something different? Do you need something presented differently to you, or whatever? And I don't think anyone's going to be offended by that, are they? If you just
Not at
ask the
all.
questions. Yeah.
Not at all. I think it's actually be really appreciated by those who are in that category of neurodiversity. I think something that we might struggle with is actually presenting it, because there's all of these assumptions and stereotypes around it. If a leader comes forward and kind of invites that into the conversation, I think we really appreciate that, and we can really bring forward what accommodations we need, what the strengths and weaknesses are, and how we can kind of lean on each other to go forward.
I'm loving this conversation, actually, Clara, because we're talking about inclusivity, and we're not just talking about gender either. We're actually
Yeah.
talking about inclusivity in a much broader sense.
Yes.
which is really great. Just taking that lens that we're talking about there and just moving it out, let's see, to Gen Z in general. So, if you were in an organization with someone like me, who's a very different generation to you, what advice would you be giving me when it actually comes to interacting with Gen Z people, getting the best? Because I speak to a lot of people in my practice, and one of the issues can be the leading or a multi-generational workforce and the complexity around that and the piece around, well, I don't understand them, or like they all seem to have stuff handed to them on a plate or whatever it is. But what advice would you give to somebody who's in different generation to you, who'd be leading Gen Z?
Gen Z, although we are quite loud with what we need and what we want, we don't just want to be heard, we want to be understood. So I think it is really important for leaders to be open to new perspectives and to challenge their own perspective, even if that disrupts the norm and makes them feel uncomfortable, because these kinds of disruptions are what really build innovation and highlight new ideas and kind of create these new opportunities. But I think you could almost think about it as an inclusion perspective or a diversity perspective as well. Have the open mindedness, yeah, be open to have those conversations, ask questions, so you can really get to know this generation and see what they need. Because once you're able to kind of have that to and fro, or that dialogue, you're able to kind of build together what you need and kind of succeed from there.
Very interesting. And if there was one, let's call it non-negotiable for you when it comes to being part of somebody's team, what would that be when we look sort of, the current state of work and the future of work? What would be the non-negotiable for you?
For this, there's two non-negotiables for me. Sorry to say, but the first one is communication, and with that, transparency. And I know it might sound cliche to say communication. I would expect an open two-way communication and to kind of know all the facts to do what I need to do. So, for example, if a manager asks me to perform a task like gather some data and pull a report, I want to know the why and the how behind it so I can complete it to the best of my ability, and perhaps even have the opportunity to go above and beyond. Perhaps I came across other data that's totally relevant. I wouldn't have known or been able to do that if I had information withheld about the what and the why behind that task. But my number two would to be led by example, because that's how you mentor and you guide. Leadership is not just about managing anymore. I would expect a leader to kind of create and carve that space for me and my team to really grow, really learn and develop, and for all of us to support one another. So, yeah, leading by example is a really big one for me.
Very interesting. Can I just then move you on just to talk about technology, because you're obviously a digital native? Just in terms of generative AI, because I mean, that's in a sense, you didn't grow up with that. That was introduced to you as well. And I'm just wondering, in terms of Gen AI for you, where do you stand in relation to it? Is it something you're concerned about? Is it something that you use? Does it excite you? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I am feeling a lot of different ways about AI, to be honest. I think it is a really remarkable breakthrough, in technology and in today's world, about how much it can help us in work and personal life. But of course, it's new, and with newness can sometimes have this frightening element. I think it does need to be regulated a little bit more, because we are seeing some kind of frightening things at the moment of what it can do. Yeah, but overall, I do use it for work sometimes. I use it in my own personal life as well, especially with being an immigrant. Sometimes you need a little bit of a hand to figure out a system out, with the municipality, or with something with language.
Yeah.
It can be really, really helpful. But yeah, I do have a few mixed feelings about it, but I think it's up to everyone to use it responsibly and in the right way.
Very good. And can I just ask you just a little bit, because something you said there led me on to think about you crossing cultures and working in a very different cultural environment to the one you were brought up in.
Yeah,
And I'm just wondering, like, what have you learned from that, or what have been the challenges? Like when you look back so far over I think you've been there about 4 years in the Netherlands, about that, is it?
five and a half
Five and a
years.
half,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
like, what have you learned? Like, what advice would you give to people, who are moving cultures?
I've definitely learned a lot when I look back. I see how naive I was at the beginning, but yeah, I really learned a lot about myself, a lot about a new culture, a lot about my own culture. But when people ask me this, the first thing that kind of pops into my head, it's quite funny actually, is just the difference in communication here in the Netherlands. The Dutch tend to be quite direct and don't beat around the bush, while the Irish really want what they're saying to land quite politely and quite nicely. We never ever want to put somebody out or upset anyone or negatively impact anyone. So that was something that I really had to adjust to at the beginning. I was kind of like, why is everyone being so mean to me? But I learned to appreciate it, that directness and straight to the point is not time wasting, and I can get that. And that's something that I've had to adapt to over time. I've learned so much about myself in terms of how resilient I am, and how resilient I can be, and how I'm able to adapt so quickly in a place that is quite unknown. Even though I've been here over half a decade, there's still so much out there in the Netherlands that I haven't uncovered yet, or still challenges that come my way and I have to figure it out. But my advice would be is, for someone who's moving country and moving cultures, would be to do it head first, go straight in, just be open to yourself and your reactions, and rely on your peers, rely on the people that you have. When I was first here, I was determined to make new friends, but I made sure I didn't forget about my old ones, the ones that were back at home. They're the ones that you can always rely on. You can call, you can FaceTime, you can have a cry with them if you need, but I think go headstrong straight in and just be open. You're going to meet so many new people along the way. You're going to learn so much, whether it be about yourself, about the new country. Just go head first. That's my advice. And yeah, there are going to be ups and downs along the way, but those are all mapped out, a part of your journey, and they make you who you are and who you're going to be.
Fantastic. That's really interesting. And, there's a great piece of work that's done by Professor Emer Nolan in Trinity Business School. And she talks about culture shock, and just sort of that transition period where you're kind of a fish. She uses the analogy of fish out of water,
Yeah, yeah,
which you probably experienced, did you?
absolutely. Yes, yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. You're trying to keep it afloat and trying to figure out so much at the same time, but as long as you have your own back, I think that's what really matters.
Great, and a great learning experience as well, I'm sure. Clara, I'm really reluctant to bring this conversation to an end, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to. Before we go, I'd love to do a quick fire round with you. So humor me on this. Let's see where we end up on this. So let's get started. Leadership in one word.
Empowerment.
Instagram or TikTok?
This is a hard one for me
Yeah.
because Instagram is around a really long time actually, and I think it was one of the apps that really kind of glued us to the phones. I think I was about 12 or 13 when it came out. So, yeah, and it's one of these. Instagram has not just your videos and your content, but it has your friends and family, the photos, the stories. So it's quite personable. But TikTok, I also love because I could be on it for hours, and I have learned so much from TikTok. It's almost like another Google, because
Right.
sometimes when I want to find something out, I can type it into TikTok and I can kind of get like a lived experience from it, which is sometimes even way better than just getting some text from Google. So this one is quite hard for me, but I think at the moment it's TikTok.
Interesting. Message or voice note?
I think also a hard one for me, but I am loving a voice note at the moment because it's kind of like a call in your own time, that way? So you don't have to talk to the person on the phone right now, but you can, send them what you wanna send, and I think sometimes texts they mightn't land how you want them to land, so a voice note, you can kind of get your point across how you wanna get it across. So for this one, it's a voice note for me, yeah.
Okay. What about remote, hybrid, or in office?
For me, this is hybrid for sure. I think in office is something that I would be quite reluctant about if I had a job offer per se, but just because I think it can be quite energy consuming, with the commute and socializing every day. Your social battery has to refuel every night. And remote for me, I think, can be quite lonely. So I think that in between and that balance of hybrid, you have the social aspect of things, you have the collaborative aspect in person, but you also have that time at home to really focus. For me, I have to pay a lot of attention to detail, and
Mhm.
having a nice quiet environment at home can really help. So for me, it's a hybrid for sure.
Very good. And what about most inspiring Gen Z public figure right now?
For me, this is Greta Thunberg. I think her activism at the moment is totally remarkable, especially as a young woman. I think she is extremely brave, and the fact that she's so outspoken, I just think that she is so inspiring. And I think she's going to be a role model for a lot of younger girls and younger people out there.
Very good. AI, game changer or job taker?
For now, it's a game changer, and I just really hope that it gets a little bit more regulation. But I don't think it's at the level now to be a job taker. But yeah, it's a game changer for now.
9 to 5 or flexible hustle?
Is it wrong of me to say a flexible 9 to 5 and combine the two? I mean, I think this one is down to personal preference, but for me, I do like a bit of structure, but I would like a little bit of flexibility. Like if I have an appointment in the morning, if I can do a 10 to 6 or an 11 to 7, or kind of, make up those hours later on. But for me, I like the structure of a 9 to 5.
And one soft skill that every leader must have?
I think this is emotional intelligence. I think you just have to have a level of humanity around about you to be personable with people and really understand your employees.
Very good. Your go-to source for work or career inspiration?
For me, this is actually LinkedIn, because I love popping on LinkedIn in the evenings and having a scroll through my activity page, and just seeing how all my peers are doing and what they're moving on. People that I've gone to college, or I've been in college with a few years ago, seeing how they're making the next moves in their life, or girls that I've been in school with almost a decade ago. What are they doing? What are they learning? And I just think it's really nice to see, and the kind of, yeah, I think it gives me this inspiring feeling that, like, okay, they're doing well, I'm gonna do well as well,
Yeah.
and we're all on our own journey. So yeah, I think it brings me a lot of comfort as well, kind of in my own career journey too.
Very good. And of course, the Leadership Discoveries podcast.
Of course, obviously. Because I see that on my LinkedIn, and yeah, I see that, and of course, most definitely
Okay.
Shirley.
Finally, one thing that you would never tolerate from a leader.
For me, this is a lack of accountability. This is something I definitely find, like, I definitely hold myself accountable, and I think it's something that a lot of actually Gen Z do as well, is that they really hold on to the saying of the man who made a mistake never made anything, like failure leads us forward. And I think if you're able to take accountability for what you've done, you're creating this space for yourself to learn. But if you're not holding yourself accountable, I think you're just pushing the issues under the rug, and you're kind of hindering yourself from growing, and then that will hinder the rest of your team as well.
Okay, Clara, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I have to say thank you very much indeed for joining me on these Gen Z podcasts. It's been fantastic. Thank you. I've had great fun.
Thank you so much. I've had so much fun as well, Shirley.